Big Talk on Global TV. My name is Topsy Jimba. Tonight, we are going to take a look into the Supreme Court judgment delivered on the Edo State governorship election that was conducted last year, 2024, September 21st precisely. Of course, I have with me to join on this program notable luminary lawyers from various parts of this country. Some other persons were coming from the United States of America, precisely Texas, to explain basically the judgment, what it stands out to be, and the benefit we are out of it for Nigerian and politicians particularly. Of course, I listened to the judgment just yesterday, where the five panels that look into the case by the candidate of the PDP in the person of Asue Godalo, where he challenged the election based on some other areas he felt that they needed to look into them, so that at the end of the day, either he will be sworn in or not. But when the matter started from the tribunal, got to the appeal court, and eventually until it reached the Supreme Court, and the judgment was delivered yesterday by Justice Lawal Mohammed Garba. And then he, in his own judgment, he said the case or the petition does not really, or didn't have sufficient merit over time. And so Monday was finally given the clean slate of winning the election. What he needs to do now is to sit up and do the right thing, because no more court cases hanging on him. And we'll be joined by three most important persons. One, I have Dennis Osaratin from Benin City to tell us more about this particular judgment delivered yesterday by the Supreme Court. And I believe he's just by the side to join us via Zoom from Benin City on this judgment. How do they feel having received that judgment from Benin City yesterday by the Supreme Court? It's a pleasure having you on the program this evening, Dennis Osaratin on Big Talk Global TV.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening.
Thank you very much. Yes, very quickly, can you talk to me? Basically, yesterday you listened to the judgment delivered by the Supreme Court concerning the Edo State election that was conducted on the 21st of September 2024. What's your take on that?
Well, for me, as a lawyer with the requisite experience in litigation and, of course, electoral petition practice, Supreme Court is the final bus stop. You know, like we always say in our jurisprudence classes, that there is no further appeal beyond the Supreme Court. You know, perhaps the only available avenue for you to appeal will be to appeal to God, and then to the court of public opinion. And that's why the Supreme Court have also been recorded to have also said, a judicial of the Supreme Court have said in the past, that the court is final, right? And that the court is infallible because it is final. I don't know if you get that trail of thought. You know, it therefore means that once the Supreme Court makes a pronouncement on the matter becomes res judicata. It means that is the final, point of call, and then we can only but now begin to, look at it and do what we call judicial review, and probably, begin to conduct research papers from the pronouncement of the Supreme Court justices. So to that extent, it therefore means that all the parties now have had their grievances addressed, whether rightly or wrongly. It's now left for posterity to judge.
Following the judgment delivered by the Supreme Court, can you just allow those who are watching us right now to know basically what were those issues that led to the matter to get to the Supreme Court until the judgment was delivered yesterday? You being a lawyer and a person from Benin City.
Well, for me, the principal issue that necessitated the petition in the first instance was largely because the petitioner believed, whether rightly or wrongly, that the election was conducted largely, a contradiction of the express provisions of the Electoral Act, right? It was done, they didn't comply. The INEC, the electoral umpire did not comply substantially with the express provisions of the Electoral Act. And there are several, incidences or instances of, that can be established where you can say that there was non-compliance. For example, if there was overvoting, by the amended Electoral Act, if peradventure the umpire did not also, apply its own rules, its own regulations, its own guidelines. If, for example, they also did not deploy the use of the beavers, or there was overvoting, or there was no election at all in some of the polling units, these were some of the grounds upon which, the petitioner actually presented his petition before the tribunal. But like we now say, all these are now history and now they have become academic, because the Supreme Court has now said that the election largely, or the petitioner were unable to prove some of the allegations that they have raised, and therefore what that means is that there's a presumption of regularity in favor of the ruling party in the state, and therefore the petition was finally dismissed.
Saying that the INEC did not comply. Are you more or less indicting INEC for not really doing what it should do, or are there provisions in the law that we feel maybe INEC contravened to allow it happen the way it happened, so that at the end of the day the result will turn out to be the way we are now seeing until it got to the judgment and then finally rested?
No, putting it mildly, I am certainly not in a position to indict INEC. I was only regurgitating what the petitioner put before the court.
I'm taking this advantage to ask you this question, Barrister Dennis, because you are a lawyer. When you use the word comply, what do you mean by saying this?
Yeah, what I mean is, like I said, the petitioner had, complained before the tribunal that one of the grounds that they had against the election was the substantial non-compliance with the Electoral Act and the electoral rules and regulations of the guidelines. All right, but the court has now, affirmed the election of the governor. It therefore means that INEC, substantially complied with the provisions of the Electoral Act. So we are no longer in a position to now suggest that INEC did not comply when the Supreme Court are already giving a verdict on the matter. It therefore means that those issues are now, are not dead issues that we shouldn't overflow. But are there lessons to learn from this process? Certainly is, and I'm sure during the course of our interactions, we may be able to make some critical analysis and suggestions as to the way forward in our electoral practice and jurisprudence.
If I may ask you as a lawyer, having understood this case in that perspective, what advice will you give to any other person who has the intention to contest election, like the way it happened in Edo State, and until it got to tribunal, to the appeal court, and finally to Supreme Court, and ensuring that we don't necessarily take longer time to be looking into issues that at the end of the day you spend so much money and probably time and you don't get results?
Absolutely. For me, that for me is a more critical questions to ask at this point in time. And some of us have always argued that the current configuration, current electoral jurisprudence, is largely skewed against the petitioner. If, for example, you have reason to complain that an election was marred by irregularity, the law still requires you to come and prove. And Edo is quite peculiar because even right prior to the tribunal, commencement of hearing, we have instances where political thugs were mobilized in their large numbers to even go and barricade the INEC office in Benin, thereby preventing the petitioner from even having access to critical materials that were used in the election that would have aided them in proof of their case. Many of them couldn't have access to INEC. They couldn't get certified true copies of even the results or the ballot that were used in the elections. So how do you not expect the petitioner to prove his case when they are even prevented, by state, by actors or not state actors from having access to critical materials? Even the INEC itself, refused to produce some of the materials that were used for the elections to enable the petitioner to prove his case before the court. That means that we should now begin to advocate for a an overhaul of the Electoral Act, right? To the extent that the burden of proof must be shared between the petitioner and the respondent. In fact, INEC should be, should bear a part of that burden of proving that the election that they conducted was free and fair, right? It was done in accordance with the law. So the current situation where all the burden of proof rests squarely with the petitioner is not a fair, bargain at all, and therefore there is nobody right now, frankly speaking, that will be able to prove that there was electoral fraud with the kind of arrangement that we have right now in the country. So for me, going forward, the National Assembly should have a second look at the Electoral Act, and even the Evidence Act, to ensure that the burden of proof is shared amongst all the parties, whether INEC, whether the respondent, so that they will be able to give the courts ample materials to make a right and a justifiable decision. And then secondly, the parties must also be up and doing. Sure, by you don't have polling agents adequately educated or enlightened enough to even gather your evidence. At the point of the elections at the polling unit, that's where the rigging starts. So the political party must be politically aware of what they are contending against, and they must have the requisite materials, whether men or resources, to be able to gather sufficient evidence, that will aid them in the proof of their case. Until that is done, we may still be having this issue of our inability to prove electoral fraud even before the courts.
Talk to us. Do you think, looking at the way INEC is, would you suggest that the use of the beavers that initially being introduced as a new technology introduced in the last election, can you, in your opinion, said that really it worked, and of course we made it to be strengthened going forward in subsequent elections in this country, looking at what happened in Edo and some other places using beavers?
Clearly, for some of us,
why ask you this question, Pastor Dennis? Hold on. Why ask you this question, Pastor Dennis? Is when we talk about overvoting, that means machine was not used at that time. Probably we were doing it manually. And so if somebody tells you that using machine in conducting elections, so that at the end of the day you get the best result out of it, and then after the results have been announced, you now be told of overvoting or undervoting. To what extent can you say we are sufficiently there?
Yeah, for me, I think that for me is what is a major challenge that we have. We thought prior to the 2023 general elections and the preceding amendment of the Electoral Act that introduced this beavers machine and even suggested electronic transmission of results. We thought these were the game changer. In fact, there was a particular former INEC resident electoral commissioner, Mr. Mike Guinea, that was all around the country suggesting to Nigerians that they should have confidence in the process, that the introduction of beavers and then by the introduction of electronic transmission of results were the game changer. That these checks were introduced by INEC to guard against or create a foolproof system that will reduce the incidence of election manipulation. But Edo has not clearly shown to us that we are back to the pre-2003 mode of conducting elections, where election results can be blatantly manipulated, where these results can be written. So you are sure that a beavers is used at the polling units, but at the collation center, the INEC officials were accused of rewriting the result by themselves and then going ahead to declare those results that were rewritten against the provisions of the Electoral Act. This was one of the allegations that were raised in Edo, and some of us also saw these things live happening even at the level of the collation centers. So you are sure by the beavers were deployed at the polling units, but at the collation center, a different set of results were announced and declared by the INEC. So how do you then suggest, how do you then guarantee the confidence of the electorate in the process, where the results that the ballot that they cast at the polling unit
is different from the result that were announced at the collection center. So you can see that we still have a long way to go. So as a way of curing this lacuna, the National Assembly must now make electronic voting, electronic transmission of results to become mandatory. So people can accredit using the BVAS at the polling unit, and the results should be collected at the polling unit and transmitted electronically to avoid these instances where humans are being allowed access to manipulate the outcomes of these elections. Until that is done, we are still going to be having these issues of non-deployment of the BVAS, and even when the BVAS is deployed, the INEC officials are still being corrupted to announce a result that they emanate from the polling units, and that for us is a major threat to our democracy.
Before I let you go, can you just tell us basically the mood of the people in Edo State and with this judgment? Do you think subsequently going forward there might likely going to be some kind of voter apathy in any election at all in Edo State, looking at the way the judgment was delivered by the Supreme Court yesterday?
For me, Edo State again was a litmus test, for the, probably we're around into 2027 election and even some other, off-cycle elections that will happen in some part of the country. It's not whereby the people are not able to, by popular majority, elect their kind of leadership. That certainly will give birth to give birth to apathy. People are losing confidence daily in our electoral process, and that will spell doom for us as a people. So the INEC must now begin to put on their thinking cap to begin to deploy their men and resources to reassure the people, that their votes will count, and that they have no reason for them to doubt the outcome of the elections. And of course, they should also begin to reduce the instances of people going to court to go and challenge electoral outcome. Because if an election is free, fair, and credible, you will see that many people will not like to go to court to go and challenge the outcome. People usually go to court to challenge the outcome because they have a grievance against the process. Probably they believe that things were not done right. But the buck or the boss stops in the court of the National Assembly. They have a duty to ensure that they tinker with the Electoral Act as amended and begin to put, because one of the problems we also have is that the court are saying that some of the issues of that pertains to electronic transmission of results are not expressly provided for. They're not mandatory in the Electoral Act. So the National Assembly should now amend the Electoral Act and ensure that some of these provisions are made mandatory, so that INEC have no choice. They have no discretionary powers to pick and choose what to apply. So until that is done, the apathy will become more visible, and the people may be losing more confidence in the electoral process. And what that means is that we may be kissing goodbye to our democracy in the time to come. So, but I believe that before the 2027 election, the National Assembly will do the needful, and INEC will be more, transparent in the way and manner they conduct elections, in the country.
For speaking to Big Talk on Global TV. We quite appreciate your views and your thoughts on this matter, and I do believe you might be called upon some other time for similar kind of discussion wherever you might be. We appreciate you greatly. Dennis, do have a very lovely evening.
Thank you very much for having me, and God bless Edo State.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis, for being part of this show. Yes, next we have Ahmed Mahmoudou, APC member, joining us from Verizon from, before Mahmoudou, as a matter of fact, Barrister Oladotun Hassan from Lagos. He's also a lawyer. He believes in this administration very dearly, and I do believe his views will actually be in tandem with what's actually going on right now in Nigeria, particularly with the judgment delivered by the Supreme Court yesterday concerning the Edo State, where the petitioner took the matter from tribunal to appeal until it got to the Supreme Court. And any judgment delivered by Supreme Court stands to be the end. And so, Barrister, it's a pleasure having you on the program this evening. Big Talk on Global TV.
Yes, good evening. It's a pleasure to be on your program.
I just hope that Barrister is hearing us right now. Barrister Datun, are you hearing us right now?
I can hear you clearly. I can hear you clearly.
Oladotun Hassan, can you hear us right now?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Can you hear me too?
Yes, indeed. It's been a while, really. How are you?
Yeah, very fine, very fine. It's a pleasure to be on your program this evening.
Yeah. But sir, you've been following the trajectory going forward concerning the election saga, the 2024 election that took place in Edo, precisely on the 21st of September, where the petitioner, that's PDP candidate, took the matter to tribunal until it got to appeal court and finally rested at the Supreme Court to favor the governor. That's Monday. So basically, what will you say with this judgment, being a lawyer as you are? Well, also along the line, of course, we have Ahmed Mahmoudou, who is joining us via Zoom from Texas, USA. Two of you will be talking to us on this matter. As a matter of fact, Ahmed, good evening. Of course, I think we'll get back to you subsequently, but let's just go back to Barrister Oladitin. Yeah, we'll take a break, really. When we'll take the break, we'll come back and then we'll face the discussion squarely. Please don't go away with this big talk on Global TV. Welcome back on this segment of discussion on Edo State governorship election that was taken to tribunal, appeal court, and as well as Supreme Court, where it gave its verdict yesterday in favor of the governor. Now we are getting reactions from people, particularly lawyers, who have been following the matter from the beginning to the end and how they see it. We had Dennis Osarati from Benin City. He made his thought available to those who are watching us right now, that indeed INEC needs to be, questioned in a way it needs to do its work properly, or either taking the matter further to National Assembly for amendment. I have with me again to discuss on this similar issue, the same issue rather, Barrister Oladitin Hassan, calling from Lagos, so join us via Zoom from Lagos. Barrister, how are you doing?
Yes, good evening. It's a pleasure to be your program.
Yes, sorry for doing this. So can you just tell us basically your thought on this judgment delivered yesterday by the Supreme Court of Nigeria concerning the Edo State election that was conducted 21st September 2024?
Well, as expressly earlier admitted by my colleague Osarati earlier, that it's not about your opinion now, it's all about the finality of the case. Because whatever we are discussing now is just to give our general overview, because the case, as far as Edo State is concerned, is being put to finality, having this being decided by the Supreme Court. And then it goes to say that to what extent is a political umpire free and credible? And to what extent are the political players themselves morally right when coming to election? If you definitely look at what transpired in Edo State prior before the election, Edo State was more like a wrestling ring for all manners of infighting between the governor and the deputy governor, and whatever happened is just a process that was already premeditated to be, because of the protracted crisis that bedeviled the state. It was just more of a mixture of APC and PDP being locked up together, because you can hardly differentiate both people, because majority, even the governor came from the PDP to APC, then later they come to PDP, the deputy they come back to the APC. So the people are left confused, and it's all about how far we, the people, needs to now begin to adjudge our electoral process. It's because people are not being involved. They are more mere spectators to what is to be a major player in. Mere spectators in the fact that we cast our hope more in the politicians. These politicians, either APC or PDP, they are all birds of same feathers. But in as much as it's all about competitive democracy, and the only way we can adjudge that it is through free, fair, and credible election. But whereby there is toxic environment, you can always see maneuvering from both the PDP and the APC. It's all about which party does outreach each other, which party is more on ground in terms of security. At least the governor was in the state then, whereby he was wanting to use the local security apparatus to equally use as part of election monitoring and security, which the IG condemned then. So there are a lot of crises that precede that election nearing process itself. And that goes to say that it seems that democracy is suffering from a chronic disrepair in terms of how we manage our elections. Our elections are more like a fait accompli, like an eggshell rule. Whatever comes out of it, you take like that. Not that we can even forecast the outcome of the process by the reason of what the preparedness of everyone, including the voters, including the electoral umpire, including the security, including political parties. So the horse trading is the only thing that is really a bane of destruction. The electoral malpractices is now becoming a norm. Is now becoming a new normal that everyone just think, oh, once we get into this, how many security, how many agents are we going to pay for? Election itself is quite expensive, whereby it gives room for politicians with big butts, maybe financial butt, to go into. So, in all fairness, at the level of where it is right now, we cannot comment further or either to now re-amend the judgment. The judgment is a finality. Let parties congratulate each other and prepare for next election. But we cannot continue to run election on the premise of court declaration if the process itself is opaque, is not seen to be free and credible, if this process is being attacked from different ends, because who is the saint? Is it the PDP that we have to advocate for, that had a lot of impediments that the party placed ahead of the election, or the APC that is also coming in? So there are a lot of issues to see, but the basic thing is the fact that the human management of the process, I will put the blame on the former governor Obaseki, because if he had managed the internal crisis of his own political party, then play the fatherly role to ensure that you give room here and there, it was like a political suicide for PDP. So PDP should not cry more than what they got, because everybody went into that election with all fierceness. So whatever now comes out of it, it's now becoming a lesson for us that if this is the way we are running election, like a garage, like an NURT garage process, that whoever that has the feet, the might, and the political weight, maybe the federal might, will be the determinant of the day. At the end of the day, the courts, how is the court itself being constituted? There is a need for us to have a permanent election tribunal court, either after because majority of the election tribunal court are only constituted immediately after an election is being conducted in a state. It is now beyond the judiciary to have a special court to manage the civil aspects of electoral issue, the criminal aspect of the electoral issue. We are only concerned mainly on the civil aspect. At the end of the day, those that are rigged, those that carry weapons, those that destroy them, that maneuver the IRF, who is to be blamed? So these are a lot of issues that we will not sweep away like that. No, there is a need for the Electoral Act to be amended to the effect that all political parties, our political parties are being registered, should be taken away from INEC. The process INEC should get involved only is election and election only. When it comes to internal party affairs, registration, and ensuring political party meets the prerequisite of presenting a candidate. Because once candidates are not qualified, that, you know, just like you want to be called to bar as a lawyer, are you now saying Council of Legal Education do not have right to screen you? So political umpire or political registration commission should be able to screen the political party and their candidates. Present it. Once you are fit and proper, then they present you to the electoral umpire and they give you certificate of qualification to run election.
You are so passionate to seeing that there should be an overhaul to the electoral process in Nigeria, particularly INEC, where the law needs to be straightened, so that at the end of the day, when it comes there, it should actually reflect the minds of the electorate going forward. But let me just ask you this question. We have this OSAICO relation that will be coming up very soon in Nigeria, starting with that of Anambra State, maybe in August, and then subsequently that of Osun State. If you ask me, what will you tell the Nigerians, as a matter of fact, having taken lesson from what really happened in the State and the judgment delivered yesterday? What will you tell the gladiators in Anambra as well as in Osun going forward for the forthcoming OSAICO election there?
Well, it's most unfortunate that no lessons learned yet, because if lessons were to be learned, you first of all take the lessons of Leon's case in Bayelsa then, whereby there were a lot of internal disqualification process. This election of Edo State, just as I rightly said, the political environment in Edo State caused majority of their problem. The issue of Anambra State, Anambra to me, no matter how, there is an incumbent, and I still believe that the way Anambra State election will go will not be as tumultuous as what we saw in Edo State. Edo State is like a rugged zone, it's like a precarious zone, and a lot of issues were really aligned with that state when it comes to criminality, banditry, that kind of is a natural habitat for crime in one way or the other. So when election comes in such an environment, you can as well forecast that it will be more cumbersome. Another area that will be more cumbersome is Osun State. Osun, historically, even before election, there are already killings when it comes to the local government taking over and all that. How are they going to manage the security of that area? Do you know one of the bane of electoral process is the fact that the police prepare haphazardly towards going into election because they will need to mobilize men from all other states. Why can't we have more firepower, more human resource base, more recruitment to guarantee that security is not just on election day and they will just pay security allowance to security men alone? No, the preparation in managing election is a different ball game. Some policemen do not even know what is maybe Form E8. They don't even know which one is ballot paper. They might not even be able to differentiate, where policemen themselves have not been duly trained to identify what that process is all about. Then, in terms of the result, to me, I think with the kind of system that we have in this country, we cannot have a full digitalized electoral process considering the haphazard nature and lack of literacy in some environment and how best our electoral history has been. What INEC should be able to provide should have an hybrid situation, because if we are looking at the formation of
we need to stop here because we still have one more reaction to take from a friend of us. That's Ahmed Mahmoudou, calling from Texas, USA, to still share his thought with us on this judgment delivered yesterday by Supreme Court in favor of the governor of Edo State. I thank you so much for your time and your thoughts on this wonderful discussion I just had with you just a while ago.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. We are going to go on break. By the time we return, we are going to join via Zoom with Ahmed Mahmoudou from Texas, USA. In a short while, he will tell us more on the way he sees the judgment delivered yesterday on Edo State election. Don't go away. Welcome back. We're still on Big Talk on Global TV. Yes, we're looking at the judgment delivered by the Supreme Court yesterday in favor of the governor. And of course, we have had two most important persons that spoke to us on this matter. We had Daniel Osaratin, a lawyer, and as well Barrister Oladipo Hassan, a lawyer too, from Lagos. We are going to join by Zoom from Texas with Ahmed Mahmoudou. In case you are watching us right now, we just want to know basically what you have for us concerning this judgment on the election given by Supreme Court. Ahmed.
I appreciate the invite, and I think by and large the people of Edo State are very happy with the outcome of the Supreme Court judgment. We believe that a Daniel has come to judgment. We believe that the years of the locusts have passed, and Governor Podolo is now set to redirect the minds and energies of the Edo people towards greater progress. If you notice in his speech on the day the judgment was read out, passed on Friday, he said he was going to immediately critique the activities of the immediate past administration that had completely abandoned all its responsibilities, and the Edo people want to know where the money that was that came into the state for the last 8 years has gone, what it has been spent on, where the projects are, what the benefits are, what the income is, and by and large to know exactly what is the state of the what is Edo State's financial position currently. Where do we stand? What do we own? What are the projects? What are the benefits? Because the outgoing administration refused to hand over to do a proper handover, and the incoming administration wasn't able to ascertain what the debts are and what the credits are. So it's very good. I believe the people of Edo State welcome it. Daniel has come to judgment, and we are very happy with the outcome of the Supreme Court judgment.
One of the petitions, one of the issues raised at the petition was over voting, and you know much about Nigeria and the way INEC has actually been conducting its election, with particularly the introduction of new technology into the system, with the hope at the end of the day we get better result out of it. But if you check what happened and what used to be in the past, has there been any improvement? And if someone comes out and tells you using beavers and then we are talking about voting, don't you think that the person is right?
No, I would disagree. I'm not one of those people that thinks there hasn't been progress in our electoral system. If you would cast your mind back to the first elections or the elections from 1999 to date, you will see that there has been a constant and steady improvement. Now, let us give kudos to who it is due. INEC has done a fantastic job in the last few elections, and the outcome of most of these elections reflect by and large the will of the people. Let me point out to people who are a bit skeptical about the INEC process. INEC has what is called a triple, not double. Here in America we use double redundancy. INEC in Nigeria uses triple redundancy. What is that triple redundancy? There is the biometric redundancy, there is the image capture, and then on the documents also there are watermarks, and they are numbered serially. They are not just numbered serially, they are numbered in particular for the units and the word. So when you pick up a voting slip, for example, I'm from Issaquah West, it will specify that it is for Issaquah West. It will specify the exact polling unit. So the issue and the incidence of overvoting, yes, it is possible that it happened, but INEC has also introduced a further layer of security, which is total zero tolerance for any form of either overvoting or violence in any of the polling stations. What this means is that when an issue of violence comes up, INEC doesn't even bother to investigate. If all parties are agree that there was violence, for example, ballot snatching or kidnapping or whatever, the result in that area is completely nullified. So what you have now politicians are even advising their own supporters to reduce the incidence of violence, because nobody wants to return a zero result. So yes, there's room for improvement. There's always room for improvement in any endeavor human beings undertake. But by and large, the results of this election reflect the will of the Edo people, and Daniel has come to judgment.
We are given the opportunity to decide or probably advise INEC on Nigeria in totality concerning election in Nigeria. Which area or areas do you think we should amend to ensure that we get it right going forward?
I think one of the areas that INEC will probably look at improving, well, it is not entirely in the purview of INEC, so we need to be clear about it. When there is a large number of options, for example, in the last election, I believe the options were up to, if I'm not mistaken, about 25 political parties. Some of this creates redundancy, creates too much logistical challenges, because you have court cases that drag up till almost the date of the election, and INEC needs to prepare these documents. These are security documents, a lot of which come into the country and then are distributed to far-flung areas of the country. So if we can reduce some of the logistic challenges, that will be one of the advice I will give. Secondly, this issue of having two different dates for the elections. We have the dates for the elections for the state and then the date for the federal. No, let all these elections hold on the same day. Voter apathy will reduce. The incidence of violence too also will reduce, because everybody will be looking after their own interest. And then you have the cost of these elections that is so enormous, is such a strain on the Nigerian treasury. That will reduce that, and I believe that the National Assembly is working on something like that. So those are the things that we want to see. Also, INEC has to improve transparency, improve voter education. They need to do continuous voter education to tell the people these are the things that we put in place. This makes your vote sacrosanct, and do not be afraid. Whoever you cast your vote for, it will count. Some of these things will reduce voter apathy and increase the confidence Nigerians have in the results of their elections.
Do you feel concerned the use of military all over the place on the day of the election in Nigeria? Tell us, how does it happen in America over time? I don't know when you got to America, but I believe you watched what happened when Donald Trump actually canvassed to become the president like the way he is. Compare what you saw there and what you've been seeing today in Nigeria, particularly with the way military seems to take over the entire place for the election. Sometimes they carry guns, more or less intimidating electorate. In your own opinion, do you feel it's right? And if it is or not, what will you say going forward as an advice?
So that's a double-edged question. The democracy that we experience here is over 200 years. So it's kind of unfair to compare and contrast oranges and apples. But you do have a valid point. The military has no place, and I repeat, the military has no place in the democratic process of citizens choosing their leaders. However, this is the caveat. However, we are aware that there are certain areas of the country that are overrun by insurgents, that are overrun by bandits, and it's only the military that can guarantee safety and security of the lives of the voters in those areas. So in those areas, we have to give the exception. Now, talking about a developed place, for example, like in Lagos, why would the military be there? Except they are invited to maintain law and order, which is also part of the ongoing democratic ethos that we are building. So let us not throw away the baby with the bathwater. Where things are done improperly, we need to correct them. Where things are done right, we need to give kudos. I give kudos to INEC. I give kudos to the Nigerian citizens that continue to tell us that they want good leadership. I even give kudos to our security agencies who kind of reduce and minimize the incidence of violence and voter apathy. Now, let us also understand that some people want to make this democratic, they want to truncate this democratic process. So if we do not allow all sections of our citizenry, including the security services, to have a sense of belonging, we may be doing something wrong. I'm not one for the military presence. I'm not one for them flaunting their arms and ammunition. That doesn't happen here. But there are several instances where it is necessary for that show to allow people feel confident enough to come out without intimidation. But that is also a double-edged sword, because people feel that whoever is the incumbent will invite security forces to intimidate the opposition. So it's a fine balance, but we have to keep on moving. The most important thing is that by and large, our elections are showing the choice of the people, and that cannot be taken away.
Well, Ahmed Mahmoud, we thank you so much for being part of this show this evening. Big Talk on Global TV. You are in Texas. We wish you happy stay there. Of course, people are really jubilating over the Supreme Court judgment delivered yesterday in favor of the governor. And I believe you are doing the same thing there with your friends. So thank you so much for taking time to speak with us on some of these issues. And we shall be keeping you posted. In case we need you, you will join us again in some other discussion that we've just done. We thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the invite.
Yes, that's how far we can go on this program, Big Talk on Global TV this evening. I believe you listened to the lawyers that really talked about what should be done going forward in the Nigerian election. Of course, we had Dennis, we had Oladotun, and then the last was Ahmed Mahmoud. We thank you so much for your views on this matter. We shall be back maybe with similar kind of discussion some other time. My name is Topsy Gimba, and bye-bye.